Let's talk about a guy named Saju, who was honestly the definition of a hopeless, shameless, desperate guy who spent every waking moment chasing after a girl who clearly didn't want him. But in a twist that nobody saw coming, he suddenly grew a backbone and decided to stop annoying her to pursue other girls, which ironically made her obsessed with getting him back just so he could be hers again. This whole mess started on a regular day when Saju was trying to do his usual routine of praising Ika like she was a goddess. But this time, she completely lost her cool and flipped out on him. She brutally told him that the reason she would never accept him was because he had absolutely zero self-respect, and hearing those harsh words flip a switch inside his brain, making him promise himself right then and there to stop chasing her for good. Later on, he walks into the classroom and just takes his seat quietly without drooling over Ika or acting like a fool, which was such a weird change of pace that it basically shocked the entire room. Even the teacher was confused when he walked in and saw that Saju wasn't practically licking Ika's shoes like he usually does. And while the whole class started laughing at the awkward vibe, Ika just sat there trying to hide how embarrassed she felt. After class ended, Ika saw him walking in her direction and immediately got annoyed because she assumed he was back to his creepy stalking habits. But she was stunned when Saju simply explained that he just really needed to use the bathroom. He walked right past her with zero interest and went into the restroom. But the moment he got inside, he was practically kidnapped by his friends who demanded to know if he had gotten into a huge fight with Ika. Saju kept insisting that nothing happened and he was just acting normal. But he went back to class, leaving his friends genuinely worried about his mental health because this behavior was so strange. When lunch break rolled around, Ika actually tried to start a conversation with Saju, but he completely ignored her presence and decided to walk to the cafeteria all by himself. His buddy Takaro chased him down and asked what on earth was wrong with him, pointing out that usually Saju would be on his knees begging for even a tiny chance to eat lunch with her. Saju just kept acting like everything was totally fine and walked away, leaving everyone, especially his confused friends, scratching their heads in disbelief. While he was sitting there eating his lunch alone, a super attractive girl named Rina came over and tried to chat him up, but Saju was clearly not in the mood for romance, so she just told him they would talk later and walked away. The very next day, Saju arrived at class only to find out that Rina was already there waiting to meet him, which made Takaro immediately accuse him of betraying Ika to chase after this new girl. Ika heard this accusation and, unable to handle her frustration, immediately stormed out of the classroom to hide her feelings. Later during sports class, Saju felt kind of guilty because he knew Ika had gotten the completely wrong idea, but he was too scared to go talk to her, so he just went to the locker room to get cleaned up. While he was washing up, Ika's best friend, a girl named Kei, showed up and started roasting him, calling him a shameless womanizer for trying to play games with both Ika and Rina at the same time. She warned him not to waste his time trying to date Rina because she had just broken up with the hottest guy in the grade above them, but Saju barely listened because he honestly didn't have any romantic feelings for Rina anyway. Eventually, he met up with Rina, and she explained that she had dumped her boyfriend because she overheard him talking about other girls that were his type. Saju told her to chill out and not overthink it because guys talk about other girls with their buddies all the time. And then he opened up about his own pathetic love life. He told her that he actually had a crush on a different girl before he met Ika, but that girl had made fun of him for even thinking he had a chance. And to make it worse, her boyfriend had tried to act like a tough guy and bully him. He explained that right at that low moment, Ika had shown up and helped him out, and ever since that day, he had become totally obsessed and dedicated his entire life to loving her. However, since Ika had rejected his feelings for years, he told Rina that he had finally decided to stop the chase and would just admire her from a distance like a normal person. Hearing this story actually made Rina feel a lot better about her own ex-boyfriend, so she decided to give the guy another chance and thanked Saju for the reality check. The very next morning, Ika and her best friend Kei were walking to school when they spotted Rina strolling down the street with her ex-boyfriend, realizing that those two had officially gotten back together. Later on in the classroom, Kei tried to roast Saju by making fun of him for completely fumbling the bag with both Ika and Rina, but Saju barely even reacted because he already knew that Rina never actually liked him like that anyway. His total lack of caring just made Ika even more stressed out than before, so she decided she needed to get to the bottom of his sudden personality transplant and figure out what was going on in his head. After school let out, Saju went home and started having flashbacks to one of the many times Ika had brutally rejected him, wondering why he ever deluded himself into thinking he had a shot with a girl like that. Suddenly, Ika actually showed up at his front door, and after he let her inside, she started blushing and acting all awkward, which was super weird considering she usually just ignores him. She finally asked him why he had been acting so strange at school, and he simply explained that it is just creepy to keep chasing a girl who clearly doesn't want him, so he's done with it. Just as things were getting serious, his sister Cade came home and was absolutely shook that her loser brother managed to get a hot girl to actually come over to the house. Saju immediately dragged Ika outside to escape his sister's teasing, and while he was walking her home, he reassured her that she wouldn't have to worry about his stalking habits anymore because he was turning over a new leaf. But then, Saju made the mistake of asking asking if she had any single girlfriends she could hook him up with, which made Ika furious because she secretly wanted all his attention for herself, so she just ran off in frustration. The next day in class, Kei dropped a truth bomb on Saju, telling him that he was the actual reason Ika didn't have any other friends besides her. Apparently, his relentless stalking and creepy obsession made everyone else think that dealing with Ika came with too much drama, which made Saju feel terrible and promised to support Ika by staying out of her way. After he left the room, his friend Takaro grabbed him and asked why he wasn't worshipping the ground Ika walked on like usual, but Saju just told him to go find his own girlfriend and walked away to figure out how to stop being a total simp. A little later, a girl named Shinomiya stopped him to ask if he was the guy who bumped into her friend Yuyu the other day. Saju remembered the accident and apologized, saying that a real man should watch where he's going and shouldn't be bumping into fragile girls. But Shinomiya was surprised he took the blame so easily since it was just an accident. She ended up dragging him to the guidance room to ask for advice because her student committee members were losing their spark, and she didn't know how to relate to them because they kept saying she wouldn't understand their struggles. Saju realized she just needed a reality check, so he told her to stop trying to be their buddy and start acting like a boss who motivates them by acknowledging their hard work instead of trying to force a connection. Shinomiya realized he was totally right and thanked him, but when she asked for his name, Saju decided to pull a fast one and gave her Takaro's name instead before walking away. The next morning, he got stuck carrying heavy stuff for his sister and made a snarky comment about how women are nothing but trouble. And when she told him that his attitude was exactly why he had zero luck with the ladies, he just sighed and accepted his tragic fate. Just then, his sister Cade spotted Ika nearby and immediately snatched the heavy boxes out of Saju's hands, practically forcing him to go over and talk to her. However, Saju was determined to stick to his new rule of not being a pathetic simp anymore. So instead of begging for her attention, he just gave her a quick, dry greeting and kept walking like she was a total stranger. Ika looked like she desperately wanted to say something important, but she totally chickened out right before they reached the school gates, leaving the air between them super awkward. Just as they were about to split up, Cade came running back to warn Saju that Shinomiya was absolutely furious with him and was currently waiting inside his classroom to chew him out. The moment they walked through the door, Saju tried to come up with an escape plan, but Shinomiya marched right up to him, clearly salty that he had the nerve to give her a fake name the day before. She bossed him around and told him to report to the guidance room during lunch again, then stormed off with her timid friend Yuyu trailing behind her. Before Ika could even ask how on earth a loser like him knew the head of the disciplinary committee, Takaro grabbed Saju and tried to put him in a headlock for using his name to get out of trouble. But Saju, being the smooth talker he is, reminded Takaro that he actually has a massive crush on Shinomiya, so he should be grateful that she finally knows his name, even if it was under weird circumstances. A little later, Cade also attacked him, demanding to know how he was on a first-name basis with someone so powerful, and when he explained that he lied to protect his own skin, she just called him an idiot for making enemies with the scariest girl in school. When lunch rolled around, Saju showed up at the guidance room with a bunch of snacks as a peace offering, but since Yuyu was too terrified to eat anything, Shinomiya happily devoured the entire pile herself. Saju tried to explain that guys with bad reputations like him usually get expelled if the student council notices them, which is why he lied, but Shinomiya still lectured him about throwing his best friend under the bus. Saju argued that Takaro actually liked the attention, and while Yuyu seemed to understand the logic, Shinomiya was completely clueless until Saju had to awkwardly explain the situation. However, poor Yuyu got scared of him again and hid behind Shinomiya, forcing Saju to apologize for merely existing in her presence. Shinomiya then revealed the real reason she called him there was because Yuyu felt guilty for running away from him earlier and wanted to promise that she would work on her intense fear of men. After leaving the room, Saju's friend Kei took him to look at the classroom, where Ika was finally making friends with other students, which made Saju realize that his creepy obsession had been the only thing blocking her from having a normal social life all this time. Just then, he got a text from his sister demanding he come to the council office, and when he arrived, she tried to force him into doing manual labor for an upcoming event. He tried to refuse, but she ruthlessly blackmailed him by bringing up the time he faked his age to get a job. So he sighed and finished all the difficult tasks in record time, shocking the other members who thought he was useless. While his sister was busy locking him into helping again tomorrow, Shinomiya noticed that Yuyu looked deep in thought and asked if it was because of her conversation with Saju. The next day, Ika walked into class and was suddenly swarmed by a group of girls asking to come hang out at her house, and when Saju walked in, they invited him too, but he politely declined the offer. After class, Ika tried to confront him and ask if he was seriously going to skip the hangout, but before he could answer, Shinomiya interrupted them and dragged him away for another chat. She told Saju that Yuyu seemed super depressed about the way he reacted to her new goal, but Saju kept it real and explained that Yuyu only made that promise to fix her own insecurities, not because she actually felt bad about what happened between them. The following week kicked off with the usual usual chaos as Cade decided to sneak up on Saju in class to scare the living daylights out of him. But instead of screaming like a little girl, he immediately roasted her for wearing an outfit that was way too distracting for a school setting. Cade just rolled her eyes and teased him for having zero self-control, pointing out that his precious crush Ika was wearing the exact same thing. But right as she started bragging about how fun the weekend hangout was, the teacher walked in and ruined the conversation. Hours later, after gym class had finally ended, Saju was trying to cool off at the water fountain when his buddy Sasaki walked up to congratulate him on actually playing well for once. When Saju asked how things were going with Takaro, Sasaki told him to stop talking about that goofball and immediately shifted the topic to how much fun he had hanging out with Ika's little sister, Ayeri, during the weekend. He proceeded to rub salt in the wound by showing Saju a bunch of happy photos from the hangout, and when Saju asked why he wasn't there, he had to awkwardly admit that nobody had actually invited him. Saju tried to clap back by teasing Sasaki for hanging out with Ayeri when he already has a super jealous younger sister at home who would probably kill him, but the banter was cut short when Cade sent a text saying she didn't need his help with anything that day. Sasaki, being nosy, asked why Saju hadn't been walking home with Cade recently, and Saju casually explained that they hadn't spoken in days, claiming it wasn't a big deal because they secretly couldn't stand each other anyway. A few minutes later, back in class, Takaro wandered over to ask why Saju had been acting so distant lately, so Saju reminded him that the teacher had moved his seat to the very front of the class, far away from the action. Takaro then bragged that he had found a new friend group that included a rough-around-the-edges girl named Koga, and he insisted that Saju come eat lunch with them. Saju tried his best to tolerate their obnoxious laughter while he ate, but the vibe got weird when they started grilling him about his relationship with Ika and asking why he had become so quiet and reserved these days. After explaining for the 100th time that he was forced to sit at the front of the class, Saju jokingly grabbed Takaro by the collar, accusing him of being the lucky one because his new seat was right near Ika, meaning he got to enjoy the view all day long. Takaro laughed it off and told him not to worry because he was currently focused on a new girl who had allegedly asked him out, but Koga immediately burst out laughing and told him to get real because that girl was definitely joking. Takaro refused to believe he was being pranked, but right in the middle of their argument, Ika suddenly appeared and literally dragged Saju out of the room and into an empty classroom. Saju's heart was pounding out of his chest because she looked absolutely furious, and he was terrified because he usually gives her plenty of reasons to be mad, but this time he had no clue what he did. She just stood there staring at him in silence. So Saju finally mustered up some courage and begged her for a hint about why she was so upset. When Ika finally admitted that she was mad because he had been talking to other girls, Saju was completely blindsided and took a moment to process why on earth she would even care about his social life. He asked her why it mattered, and Ika immediately panicked, yelling that it wasn't what he thought before turning around and running away to escape the awkwardness. A few minutes later, Saju was back in his seat, still trying to solve the mystery of Ika's anger, so he asked her best friend Kei for insight, but even she had no idea why Ika would be jealous over him talking to a girl like Koga. Just as he was venting his frustration, the entire class started whispering and gossiping because the popular guy, Hayato, walked in and specifically asked to speak with Saju. As they stepped into the hallway, Ika pulled Kei aside for a private chat, while Hayato got straight to business and asked Saju for his honest opinion of himself. Saju didn't hesitate to roast himself, explaining that he was basically useless, which prompted Hayato to ask about his famous obsession with Ika and why he had suddenly stopped acting like a total simp. Saju refused to go into the embarrassing details, simply shrugging it off and saying that he had just decided to stop doing too much and chill out for a change. Hayato stood up and dropped a massive truth bomb, claiming that Saju's recent personality change was actually destroying his sister Cade emotionally because she was starting to blame herself for his depression. Saju was completely confused by this accusation because, as far as he knew, his sister had always hated his guts and enjoyed making his life miserable, so the idea of her caring was laughable. However, Hayato explained that Kaede genuinely believed that her years of verbal abuse and bullying had finally broken Saju's brain, causing him to become this quiet, withdrawn shell of a man. Saju still refused to believe that the demon living in his house actually had feelings, but Hayato insisted that it was true and basically forced him to go have a heart-to-heart conversation with her to clear the air. Hayato admitted that he had already set the whole thing up, so they headed out together, and while they were walking through the hallways, Saju noticed that literally every single girl they passed was practically breaking her neck just to get a glimpse of Hayato. He asked Hayato how he managed to stay so cool when he had that much female attention, and Hayato explained that he used to be a romantic, but getting his heart broken in the past taught him to keep his guard up. He revealed that Kaede was actually the one who saved him from spiraling into depression back then, which was exactly why he was trying so hard to help fix her relationship with her brother now. A few minutes later, Saju arrived at the rooftop and immediately told his sister not to bother waiting for Shinomiya because the entire meeting was just to trap Hayato Hayato cooked up to get them to talk. He then roasted her by asking when exactly she became such a softie who worries about her little brother, and although she tried to deny it, he challenged her to list 10 personality traits he had to prove she actually paid attention. After she listed a bunch of insults calling him a boring, average nobody, Saju admitted that her harsh reality checks actually gave him a realistic view of life, so he wasn't even mad about it. However, Katie started feeling guilty again, claiming that her constant insults were the reason he turned into a coward who quit chasing the girl he loved, but Saju stopped her right there. He explained that his decision to stop harassing Ika was a personal choice to help her be happy, and he told his sister that he actually preferred her being a loudmouthed bully rather than this weird, depressed version of herself. Cade finally started to understand where he was coming from, but just as she offered to give him a hug and show her sweet side for once, he rejected it, which was a huge mistake. Suddenly, Ika stormed onto the roof and grabbed Saju by the collar, screaming at him to apologize to his sister for being so rude to her when she was just trying to be nice. When Saju asked why on earth she was even there, Ika realized she had just exposed herself for stalking him ever since he left the classroom with Hayato, so she panicked and ran away to avoid dying of embarrassment. Hours later, Saju decided to be the bigger person and stopped by the store to buy Kaede's favorite snacks as a peace offering before heading home. He apologized for being unnecessarily rude on the roof, but she gave him the silent treatment until he threatened to eat all the snacks by himself, which made her snap immediately. She turned into a total glutton and started stuffing her face with chips. So Saju decided to get revenge by taking the most unflattering pictures of her eating to show her friends on the student council. She noticed the camera and immediately grabbed a club to smash his skull in, proving that their sibling relationship was back to normal. Meanwhile, at a restaurant, Ika was venting to her best friend Kei, wondering why she had suddenly lost her cool and chased after Saju on the roof like a crazy person. Kei gave her a reality check, reminding her that this whole meltdown started last weekend. When Saju's friend bonded with her little sister, and Ika was clearly jealous because she always wanted Saju to be the one bonding with her family. She explained that since Saju had stopped chasing her like a brain-dead puppy, Ika was suffering from withdrawals and desperately wanted his attention back. Kei pointed out that Saju probably stopped trying because he had spent years confessing his feelings and simply ran out of things to say. So if Ika wanted to fix things, she would finally have to put in some effort herself. The next morning kicks off with Katie absolutely grilling Saju at the breakfast table, telling him that he seriously needs to go visit a barber because he is walking around looking like Bigfoot's hairy cousin. When he tries to act cool and says his hair doesn't matter, she calls him out on his bluff, reminding him that he used to spend hours in front of the mirror, but he just admits that was his cringe phase where he was desperate to impress Ika. Later on, Saju strolls into the classroom and finds the girls completely hijacking his desk. So instead of kicking them out, he decides to be weirdly sarcastic and greets them like a butler serving royalty. Ika is totally freaked out by him actually having manners for once, but Saju shuts it down by bringing up her crazy emotional explosion from the day before, basically saying he has to treat her with kid gloves now because she is so unpredictable. He asks if they survived the trip home, and after they talk about hitting up a cafe, Kei starts complaining that her face is melting off in the heat and basically demands that Saju fan her like a servant to save her mascara. Right at that moment, his sister Katie decides to be annoying and texts him just to say she doesn't actually need anything, which is peak sibling behavior. When lunch rolls around, Saju tries to go on a solo mission to find food, and while Ika looks like she wants to say something, she totally chickens out at the last second. Saju finally finds a lonely table to stuff his face in peace, but of course, Shinomiya pops up out of thin air with Yu and some new girl named Ayes, who looks at Saju like he is a piece of trash. He tries to say hey and ignore them, but Shinomiya drags him into their group, prompting Saju to ask if the shy little munchkin Yu finally got a boyfriend since she is actually speaking to a human male. Before she can answer, this Aya girl jumps in to clarify that no nasty boy is getting near her friend, and Shinomiya introduces Aya as the professional man-hater who is responsible for Yu's weird personality. After being forced to smile and play nice, Aya tells Saju straight to his face that the only reason she isn't destroying him right now is because Yu seems to tolerate his loser energy. When the girls head off to dump their trays, Saju asks Shinomiya why they are even hanging out, considering he previously called out their fake apology drama and expected them to hate him forever. Surprisingly, Shinomiya admits that Saju's harsh attitude actually fixed Yu because once she realized he wasn't falling for her act, she realized boys aren't scary monsters and started talking to them with way more confidence. She also thanks him for the leadership advice, then drops a massive bomb that she actually knows his sister Katie because Katie was apparently a total nightmare to deal with when she first transferred to the school. Back in class, Saju finds his buddy Sasaki drowning in a flood of text messages from his little sister, who has been completely obsessed ever since Sasaki went to visit Aika's sibling. Saju tells him to just enjoy the fact that his sister adores him, but things get awkward when Sasaki asks about Saju's relationship with Katie, which Saju dodges immediately immediately because there is nothing to tell. Finally, after spotting Aika and Kei walking together, Sasaki drags Saju outside for a serious chat. And after standing there in awkward silence for a while, Saju realizes what is going on. He tells Sasaki to stop being a coward and quit hiding his feelings because it is painfully obvious that Sasaki has a massive crush on Aika too. So, after finally coming clean and admitting that he actually plans to make a real move on her, Saju also confesses that it is going to be a total struggle for him, but he claims he is totally fine with the challenge. But of course, the second they get back to the classroom, reality hits him like a truck because he sees Sasaki already over there making Ike giggle, which makes Saju start doubting if he even has the skills to win her heart or if he should just give up now. A few hours later, the teacher tries to give Saju a job handing out some notes, but our guy is so desperate to avoid awkwardness that he dumps the task on Kei, telling her to deal with Ike before he essentially runs away to hide. By the time he eventually wanders back, he sees Ike walking out with the popular crowd, including Sasaki and Kei, so he goes to his locker to have a little pity party, accepting that he has probably lost her forever this time. But just when he is ready to give up, Ike tugs on his shirt out of nowhere, nearly giving the poor guy a massive heart attack just to explain that she actually forgot something back in the classroom. Being the helpful guy he is, he offers to tag along, and after she grabs her stuff, she starts grilling him about where he eats his lunch and why he is always sitting by himself like a loner. He starts listing off all his lonely hiding spots, but then he drops a bomb and mentions that he actually ate lunch with Shinomiya and her group of friends. Ike looks totally shocked and maybe a little jealous to hear this, immediately asking exactly what kind of relationship he has with a girl like Shinomiya. Saju quickly clears the air, explaining that she is just a friend who mostly treats him like a wise younger brother she needs to take care of. When Ike suggests that he should just go back to eating with everyone like he used to, Saju thinks about it for a second, but then realizes that him hanging around might ruin the amazing social life she is finally building, not to mention her chances with the popular Sasaki. However, he can't bring himself to be mean and reject her outright, so he just awkwardly changes the subject before they start walking out of the building. On the way out, she tells him he really needs to fix his messy hair, and after he admits that Kei told him the exact same thing earlier, Saju asks her what color she thinks would actually look good on him. Ike tries to play it cool and tells him to just pick whatever he likes, but he pushes for her personal preference, which catches her off guard. She eventually caves and tells him that back when his old crush insulted him, she probably would have ignored him too if he had brown hair, which is a weirdly specific way of saying she pays attention to him. Much later that day, Saju stops at a store to buy some hair dye, and after deciding on a dark brown shade, he heads home to start the process. Suddenly, Kei shows up uninvited, snaps on some rubber gloves, and starts aggressively scrubbing his fragile scalp like she is trying to sand down a piece of wood. The next day at school, Saju gets his midterm exam results back and has a painful realization that the only reason he used to be at the top of the class was that he was obsessed with impressing Ike, who has always been a genius student. After Kei and Takaro come over to show off their scores, he goes to check on Ike's results and feels a weird sense of pride seeing that she has gotten even smarter than before. As he is standing there trying to process everything, Sasaki shows up to mock Saju's low ranking, teasing him about how he must have lost a few brain cells over the last couple of months. Surprisingly, instead of getting depressed, Saju gets a sudden burst of motivation from the insult and decides he is going to study hard and aim for the top spot again. As he is leaving, Ike finally notices his new hair color and nearly gives him another heart attack when she points it out. A few days later in class, a bunch of the girls are excitedly making plans for summer break with Ike, but she is barely listening to a word they say because she is distracted by the fact that Saju is acting like she is invisible again. When Sasaki asks why nobody invited Saju, the girls start gossiping, claiming he doesn't even try to talk to Ike anymore. They start saying that he probably just can't handle all the new attention she is getting, and hearing this trash talk is enough to make Saju walk right out of the room. Minutes later, he is on his way back when he spots 3 Walmart Kardashians standing in the hallway, loudly gossiping about Ike. When he walks up and asks them what their problem is, the leader of the pack screams so loud she nearly wets herself, yelling at Saju for scaring her, but he just roasts her right back by making fun of her creepy, high-pitched scream. After Saju doubles down on his mockery and roasts the group of gossiping girls, they get so embarrassed that they literally run away just seconds before Ike walks out and wonders what all the chaos was about. The next morning, Saju spots Ike on the way to school, and being the socially awkward guy he is, he immediately starts power walking in the other direction just so he doesn't get caught staring at her for too long. But as she tries to catch up to him, a reckless truck driver comes speeding down the road like a maniac, and Saju decides to play the hero by rushing in to shield her from the splash, which results in him getting completely soaked in disgusting, muddy road water. He goes to get changed and tries to pretend he isn't having the worst morning ever, but his friends keep making fun of him until Ike steps in like an angel and hands him her napkin to dry off. Takuro tries to be helpful too, but he hands Saju a towel that smells so incredibly musty that it apparently has the power to knock a human out, because Saju takes one sniff and falls asleep right there on the spot. When he finally finally wakes up hours later, he tries to act cool about it, but the teacher immediately calls him out, pointing out that getting splashed by a puddle is not a valid excuse to sleep through 3 whole periods of class. Saju asks if he can go to the nurse's office because his head is pounding, but his body is so dramatic that the second he stands up, his brain shuts down and he nearly collapses again. A few minutes later, the school nurse tells Ike and Kay that our fragile hero has actually caught a fever, but he will survive. So she lets the girls go in to see him for a moment. Kay immediately notices that this is the first time Ike has ever seen Saju sleeping, and she starts teasing her about it until the nurse decides the romance is over and kicks them back to class. Much later, Saju finally wakes up, and the nurse gives him a lecture about resting because his fever might spike again, proving his immune system is just as weak as his social skills. Meanwhile, Ike is completely useless in class because she can't focus on anything other than worrying about Saju. Suddenly, the entire class swarms the door like paparazzi to welcome the popular Shinomiya, who breezes in and walks straight to Kay to ask where Saju is because she needs to talk to him. While Ike watches from the sidelines, Kay explains the whole muddy disaster, and Shinomiya decides she is going to go visit the patient herself. After she thanks Kay and leaves, Ike has to physically grab her own face to snap back to reality because apparently she has had a massive girl crush on Shinomiya for years and gets starstruck every time she sees her. A few minutes later, the girls grab Saju's bag to bring it to him, and of course, Kay tries to snoop through his stuff, but Ike shuts that down immediately and clutches the bag like a bodyguard protecting a celebrity. Moments later, they enter the infirmary, and Ike stops Kay from opening the blinds to keep the room dark, only to peek in and realize Saju is sitting there wide awake in the dark like a weirdo. He apologizes for being such a burden and making them carry his stuff, but just then his headache gets worse, so Ike tries to step in and comfort him. However, Saju dramatically recoils and tells her not to touch him, claiming he is just trying to be noble because he doesn't want to pass his germs on to her little sister at home. Kay bursts out laughing at how painfully awkward that interaction was, right before Shinomiya and another friend show up to join the party. They all head back inside, and as the other girls take turns checking Saju's temperature, Ike stands there feeling totally jealous because he seems perfectly fine letting everyone else touch him except for her. After they step out to call his mom, Ike tries to check on him one last time, only to see that he has already passed out again because staying awake for 10 minutes was apparently too much work for him. The next day, Saju skips school to recover, leaving Ike to mope around feeling sad until his doorbell eventually wakes him up from his coma. He opens the door to find the girls standing there, and they immediately start roasting him, asking if he had a near-death experience because he sent exactly one text to the group chat and then ghosted everyone. After Saju explains that he was just sleeping, Kay exposes Ike by revealing that coming to visit him was entirely her idea. Ike immediately turns bright red and tries to run away out of pure embarrassment, so Kay quickly hands over the get well gift they bought before dragging everyone out the door. The very next day, Ike is minding her own business on her way to class when she spots Saju chatting it up with Marika, who immediately notices Ike and waves her over. After looking Ike up and down and admitting that she looks surprisingly good, Marika asks for her political support, which leaves Ike totally confused until Marika explains that she is actually planning to run for student council president. Ike is skeptical and asks how she plans to pull that off, considering that being the smartest first-year student isn't really enough to win an election, especially since the seniors usually hog all the power. However, Marika's little minions quickly chime in to explain that a first year can totally run for president as long as they have enough popularity backing them up, which is exactly why Marika is trying to recruit Ike to her cause. But before the alliance can even start, Saju casually destroys her entire campaign strategy by pointing out that it's actually a terrible idea because everyone thinks Ike is way cuter than Marika, meaning the voters will just stare at Ike and ignore the actual candidate. Marika tries to argue back, but she notices everyone in the hallway already looking at Ike instead of her, so she realizes he is right and retreats to save her campaign from total embarrassment. Kay then leans over to tell Saju that Ike has been blushing like crazy ever since he called her a cutie, but Saju acts surprised, claiming she should be used to his charm by now. When Ike gets flustered and tells him to stop saying embarrassing stuff out of nowhere, he doubles down and calls her cute again, which is too much for her to handle, so she literally runs away. A few days later, Saju's brain completely stops working during a lecture, so he waits for the teacher to leave before begging Kay for some academic help. As she mercilessly roasts him for being slow on the uptake, Takuro jumps in and offers to share his notes, but Saju immediately declines because he knows that overexcited goofball is somehow even dumber than he is. Just when he is feeling hopeless, he overhears Ike talking about how easy the problem was, which bruises his ego enough that he decides to flee to the cafeteria to eat his feelings. Minutes later, he is wandering around looking for a seat when he locks eyes with Yuyu, who is sitting at the popular table with Aya and Shinomiya. He decides to join them but asks Yuyu why she even waved him over since they definitely aren't close enough to be lunch buddies. Aya immediately starts grilling him, demanding to know what kind of cheat codes he is using to get so good with the ladies. After Shinomiya joins in and accuses accuses him of foul play, Yu innocently claims she just wanted him to sit with them. The next moment, Shinomiya drops the bomb and tells him he needs to join the committee, but Saju immediately refuses, saying he is definitely not qualified for that kind of responsibility. Shinomiya explains that she is stepping down as chair after the next semester, and they are terrified of letting a girl take over because the other candidates only want the position to abuse their power. The fact that only one guy has ever been brave enough to take the job is apparently a huge selling point, but Saju is confused about why they are pressuring him now when there is still a whole semester left. After Shinomiya says she just wants him to think about it, Yu decides to use physical persuasion by grabbing his hands and begging him to consider it. Both Shinomiya and Aya immediately lose their minds with jealousy, so Saju tries to even the score by grabbing Yu's hands back, but that only makes the chaos worse. Minutes later, Ike finds Saju in the hallway trying to catch his breath after escaping the cafeteria, and she asks what happened to his hair, which looks like a bird's nest. She tells him to stay still so she can fix it, and as she gently rubs his hair back into place, Saju notices the stares they are getting and starts feeling a little shy, while Ike is so focused on grooming him that she barely reacts to the attention. The next day, the entire school herds into the ceremony hall to listen to speeches from the student representatives before summer break finally begins. First up is Yu, the only other guy on the committee, and after he gives his speech, Shinomiya takes the stage and wins the hearts of the entire crowd because she is basically a celebrity at this school. After Hayato, Kaede, and the other council members finish giving their speeches, everyone heads back to class buzzing with excitement for their freedom. Just then, the teacher kills the vibe by reminding everyone about the upcoming school tour and announcing that 2 unlucky souls have to volunteer to help out during summer break. She starts calling out people who look like they have absolutely nothing better to do, which naturally includes Saju and Ike. Now, usually, Saju would be tripping over his own feet for a chance to work with her, but this time he decides to play hard to get, or maybe just lazy, and challenges a guy named Tabata to a game of rock, paper, scissors just to escape the responsibility. As soon as Saju wins his freedom and Ike gets stuck with the job, the thirsty Sasaki practically begs Tabata to trade places with him so he can slide in. Tabata happily agrees to bail, and while Sasaki is busy drooling over the chance to work alongside Ike, Kei tries to get under Saju's skin by saying the two of them actually look like a perfect couple. Instead of getting jealous, Saju just agrees with her like a robot. When she asks why he doesn't care, he claims there is no point in denying the obvious facts. When Kei keeps poking the bear to get a reaction, he just gets up and walks out like he has better things to do. Much later, Kei and Ike head to their usual hangout spot to celebrate the start of summer break and plot out their vacation. After agreeing on a bunch of fun activities, Kei suggests inviting Saju along, but Ike instantly turns into a shy mess and asks why Kei is so obsessed with bringing him up. Meanwhile, Saju has apparently decided to become a productive member of society and starts a shift at a nearby bookstore, where he quickly impresses the owner by actually doing his job and organizing things properly. A few minutes later, he is trying to sweep the floor when he overhears 3 guys bullying a little kid named Koda. Saju walks over with zero fear, casually grabs Koda's bag, and checks on the kid while completely ignoring the wannabe tough guys until they get awkward and leave. He tells Koda to call home and waits with him until his sister, Fuka, shows up. And let's just say, she is smoking hot. Saju takes one look at her and almost forgets his own name, but he manages to keep his jaw off the floor long enough to play it cool. He tells her to check Koda's stuff and warns the kid to stay away from dark alleys like a wise old man. The next morning, Kei decides to treat Saju like her personal butler and orders him to make her some coffee before grilling him about Shinomiya's offer. Saju is shocked she even knows about it, but she reminds him that news travels fast. He explains for the 100th time that Shinomiya just treats him like a little brother and insists he doesn't want the stress of being on the committee. Kei then flips the script and suggests he should just join the student council instead because she doesn't want some random nobody taking the spot. Saju can barely believe she is serious and tries to refuse again, but she insists he would actually be good at it, which is the nicest thing she has ever said to him. Days later, Saju is back at the library, grinding away at his job when Fuka shows up to properly thank him for saving her brother. After a few minutes of them staring at each other with hard eyes, Fuka admits she loves talking to him because she has zero experience with guys, thanks to her overprotective family and going to an all-girls college. She then hands him a gift for helping Koda, and after she leaves, Saju gets all excited hoping it is something romantic or cool. But when he opens it, he finds a napkin meant for newborn babies, proving that even beautiful girls can be totally weird. So a few days pass by, and just like clockwork, Fuka pops up again out of nowhere, claiming she was actually on her way to the library, which sounds like a total excuse just to bump into our main guy. After Sadhu thanks her for constantly coming over to check on him like a lost puppy, he spots a fancy little bracelet on her wrist and mentions that he never really pegged her as the type of girl who cares about flashy jewelry. Fuka immediately gets defensive and explains that she didn't even want it, but her friends basically pressured her into getting it, which is the classic "I'm cool but peer pressure got me" excuse. Sadhu is actually shocked to find out she made the thing herself, so she starts explaining how there is this shop down by the ocean that teaches random customers how to build their own accessories from scratch. She steps in way too close to show him the shop's website on her phone, but Sadhu, being the absolute awkward mess that he is, has to look away because apparently her face is just too bright and beautiful for his poor eyes to handle. Suddenly, a light bulb goes off in his empty head, and he realizes this is actually the perfect chance to make a birthday present for Ika, so he asks Fuka to tag along and show him where this magical store is. The very next day, they are heading toward the shop, and Sadhu starts overthinking everything, wondering if Fuka feels weird about being seen in public with a guy like him. She suddenly freezes up and says she really doesn't want anyone from their school to spot her right now, and Sadhu, with zero self-esteem, laughs and says he totally gets it because walking next to him is probably embarrassing. But then she throws him a curveball and says the problem is actually her outfit, leaving him totally confused until she explains that she almost never wears clothes like this and feels super out of place. Meanwhile, on the other side of the town, Ika and Eri have just linked up with Kei to hang out at the beach, proving that everyone had the same idea today. Ika apologizes for being late, claiming she had to pack a bunch of stuff for Eri, and Kei decides on a whim to stop by Sadhu's house to drag him along too. Naturally, Ika starts panicking about how weird this little group date might look. But once Kei rings the doorbell, they realize nobody is home, so they shrug it off and keep moving toward the water. By this time, Sadhu and Fuka have already arrived at the beach, and after she takes a long moment to stare at the scenery, she tries to trap him by asking if he wants to look around for girls in bikinis. Sadhu immediately goes into panic mode, pretending he has no idea what she is talking about, and quickly changes the subject to ask when the last time she visited the ocean was. Fuka admits she came last year but didn't swim, while Sadhu admits he hasn't touched sand in years, making this whole trip way more exciting for him than it should be. He decides it's finally time to find this store, and Fuka gets all excited and grabs onto his arm to pull him along. However, she doesn't realize she is squishing her chest right up against his arm, and when she notices, she gets super embarrassed and jumps away. Sadhu tries to play it cool and tells her not to worry about it, even though we all know that was probably the highlight of his entire year. He then tries to be a gentleman and offers his hand to help her down from a ledge, but she is so clumsy that she almost trips and falls, giving him a massive view of her bouncing assets while he fights for his life to keep his thoughts pure. A few moments later, they finally arrive at the shop, but Sadhu starts getting cold feet, so she has to give him a little pep talk before they walk inside. Once they are in, he realizes he is the only guy in the entire building, which makes him want to crawl into a hole, but the lady who owns the place walks up to welcome them. She takes one look at them and assumes Sadhu is her boyfriend, causing Fuka to turn bright red and forget how to speak English, so Sadhu has to awkwardly explain that they are definitely not dating. While the girls keep chatting, he wanders off to look around, wondering if a guy with zero artistic talent can actually make a bracelet for Ika without it looking like trash. The store owner tries to give him a tutorial, but she explains it so poorly that he ends up even more confused than when he walked in. Just then, he spots a shiny shell that looks cool, and the owner tells him it's imported all the way from New Zealand, asking if he wants to use it. Fuka notices him staring at it and encourages him to give it a shot, so he agrees just so he doesn't look like a total bum standing around doing nothing, while Fuka decides to make herself a necklace since she already has enough bracelets. With that little awkward moment out of the way, the shop owner turns to Sadhu and asks if he has finally figured out what he wants to make. Of course, our main guy has absolutely no clue what Ika would actually like for her birthday because he is just that hopeless. Seeing him struggle to pick a simple design, the owner makes a wild guess that this gift must be for someone special, and Sadhu finally caves in and admits it is for a girl. Fuka immediately jumps in, asking if this mystery girl is his girlfriend, and after thinking about it for a second, Sadhu decides to just be honest about his pathetic love life. He explains that Ika has basically rejected his love for years, but he is still a massive simp for her and wants to give her a nice present just to say thanks for all the changes she put him through. While he is busy pouring his heart out to strangers, the other girls are already down at the beach having a blast. But while Kei runs off with the little one to splash around in the water, Ika decides to be boring and sits under the shade to watch them. A few minutes later, she notices the craft shop in the distance and thinks it would be a great idea to go grab a souvenir, completely unaware that she is walking right into a drama zone. Back inside the shop, Sadhu has finally picked a design, and while the owner goes to get his materials ready, he spots a photo on the wall of a girl who looks just like Fuka. He asks if she has a younger sister, but Fuka drops a bomb and and says that the picture is actually of her from just a couple of months ago when she visited with her dad. Sadhu's brain basically short-circuits trying to figure out how she grew so much in such a short time, only for her to reveal that she is still in school and actually a few grades below him. Hearing that, Sadhu starts sawing through his shell with the strength of 1,000 men, desperately trying to scrub his brain of the fact that he was just doing some very questionable activities with a girl who is essentially a child. He finally finishes the job, but he takes one look at Fuka and still cannot believe that she has grown such massive assets. Since he is finally done pretending to be an artist, Fuka asks why he is so dedicated to making something special for a girl who clearly doesn't return his feelings. Sadhu tries to explain the complex nature of love, but since he barely understands it himself, he just tells her to wait until she falls in love with someone so she can feel the pain too. Several minutes later, Aika walks into the store with the rest of the gang, but the owner breaks the bad news that the workshop is already closed for the day, so they just wander around looking at random stuff. Afterward, they find a spot to grab some lunch, and while Eri stares at the food like she hasn't eaten in weeks, Ika spots Sadhu and Fuka from behind. Since she can't see his face, she convinces herself it must be someone else. When Kay joins them, she tells her about it, and Kay gets annoyed because she actually wanted to invite Sadhu to hang out with them. When she teases Aika about the idea of him being on a date with another girl, Aika gets jealous instantly, even though Kay tells her not to worry because she is the only girl he is obsessed with. While they sit there gossiping, Sadhu plays the gentleman and hops on the bus to escort Fuka all the way home. She asks him if falling in love is scary, and after laughing at the question, Sadhu tells her not to worry because it is actually way more fun than she thinks, as long as she doesn't turn into a desperate guy like him. She eventually falls asleep on his shoulder, and while she naps, he sees a group text pop up on his phone. He wonders what they are doing until he sees a picture of Ika in a swimsuit, which basically makes his entire day. The very next day, Sadhu tells the old man running the bookstore that he is going to quit his job after the summer break. The old man completely ignores his request and says he already put out a hiring poster, asking Sadhu to train whoever walks through the door. Minutes later, Sadhu looks up to see a tiny girl named Meena, who just so happens to sit right next to him in class, proving that this guy really cannot escape the drama no matter how hard he tries. After she explains that she actually came by for the job offer, Sadhu heads over to tell the old man, who basically loses his mind with excitement because Meena is a regular customer and he absolutely loves it whenever she visits the shop. A few minutes later, Sadhu overhears the old man's wife chatting with Meena about her hairstyle, suggesting she should trim her bangs so she can actually see the world around her. Sadhu, having zero social awareness, swings the door open and starts talking to Meena like they have been best friends for years. She immediately shuts him down with a cold stare that sends shivers down his spine. But since Sadhu never knows when to quit, he keeps trying to help and asks if she always reads with her hair in her face. Meena sighs, reaches into her bag, and pulls out some clips to pin her hair back. And for the first time, Sadhu gets a clear look at her face and realizes she is actually way cuter than he gave her credit for. Moments later, the old man officially gives Meena the job, which totally catches Sadhu off guard because he didn't think it would be that easy. The next day, Sadhu spends way too much time wondering how to break the ice with her, and after remembering that they are technically classmates, he decides to drop the formal act and just talk to her like a normal person. He starts off by showing her how to stack the shells, but after 10 minutes of explaining the boring book placements, Meena points out that she is vertically challenged and might not be able to reach the high shelves. Sadhu thinks he is being smooth and jokes that he will just have to catch her if she falls off the ladder, but the thought of him touching her actually terrifies the poor antisocial girl. Sadhu notices the pure fear in her eyes and immediately regrets opening his mouth, realizing his joke landed terribly. He quickly tries to move on from that disaster and starts showing her how to work the cash register. A few minutes later, some random guy walks in looking to buy some books, so Sadhu tells her to handle it while he stands back. But the next second, the customer shows up at the counter demanding to know why they don't sell specific classic novels. It turns out this customer is a total creep who is only looking for some very questionable adult reading material. And since Meena has zero experience dealing with weirdos, she completely freezes up in terror. Sadhu notices that she is about to panic, so he rushes over to save the day, and after managing to get the creep out of the store, he tries to explain that staying calm is the secret to dealing with lunatics. However, the advice comes too late, and Meena walks off with tears in her eyes because the whole interaction was just too much for her. Sadhu decides to let her take a breather in the back room and bumps into the owner, suggesting that his wife should go talk to Meena because two guys probably won't understand why she is crying. A couple of minutes later, Sadhu tries to get back to work, but he can't stop worrying about how Meena is going to survive this job once he quits. He decides to have a serious talk with the old man and suggests that maybe they should reconsider hiring her, explaining that she is way too fragile to handle the creepy customers that wander in from the street. This makes the old man super upset because he adores Meena and was really looking forward to having her around. Seeing the old man so disappointed makes Sadhu feel guilty, so he decides to give it one more shot. He heads into the back room and asks the wife for a moment alone with Meena, so she leaves to watch the register. Sadhu then looks Meena dead in the eye and tells her she needs to grow a backbone and learn how to speak up for herself because he won't always be there to save her. As he continues his lecture on the importance of being tough, he switches from being a supportive friend to a low-budget military drill sergeant, telling her to either get her act together right now or quit the job before she gets hurt. Immediately after her disaster, Mina decides that dignity is overrated and literally faceplants onto the floor, begging Sadhu not to fire her like she's pleading for her life. Sadhu, probably wondering why he has to deal with this drama, calmly explains that he doesn't even have the power to fire anyone and just wants her to stop messing up, which miraculously cures her depression and gets her back on her feet. While everyone at the library gets hyped about her second chance, her older brother is sitting in school stressing out because his little sister has been giving him the silent treatment, which is apparently the end of the world for him. Later that day, Kay decides to start a group chat with IK just to whine about how Sadhu has been ghosting them for his precious library work. They hop on a video call to discuss their summer plans, but Sadhu finally graces them with his presence hours later, claiming he was just too busy being responsible. In a move that creates pure chaos, Kay adds Sadhu to the video chat without giving IK any warning, causing her to panic and shut off her camera like she's suddenly in the witness protection program. Sadhu decides to use this time to ask for advice about the library situation, and after hearing the story, IK tells him to stop feeling guilty because Mina really should have just used her words like a normal human being. Just as the conversation gets going, Kay suddenly claims he needs to take a bath and dips out of the call, obviously trying to set the two of them up. Sadhu tries to make small talk by asking how her summer is going, but when he asks why she is still hiding behind a black screen, she gives a terrible excuse, and the call ends awkwardly when he drops his phone before she can even turn her camera on. The next day, Sadhu shows up at the library expecting another disaster, but Mina has somehow undergone a complete personality transplant and is actually doing her job. She rushes around finishing tasks with way too much energy, and when a customer finally walks in, she manages to help them without having a nervous breakdown, which is a massive improvement. Sadhu gives her a rare compliment, and she gets so happy about doing the bare minimum that she rushes off to organize shelves with a huge smile on her face. When they finally take a break, Sadhu asks the million-dollar question: why is she so obsessed with this random part-time job? She claims it is about being independent, but then she drops a bombshell and reveals that she used to be super close with her brother until he started bringing a girl home. She felt like a third wheel in her own house, and one day, she ran into his room only to catch him kissing his girlfriend, Yuri. This moment completely fried her brain, and she realized she needed this job to distract herself from the fact that she has to compete for her brother's attention. Sadhu is stunned by how much drama is packed into this small girl, but he feels bad for her, so he promises to help her become independent. The next day, he watches her work and realizes she is actually pretty good at the quiet tasks, but she still needs help with the whole talking to people thing. Just then, Fuka walks in and Sadhu hatches a brilliant plan to introduce the two bookworms to each other. He tells Fuka that she and Mina would be best friends, and Fuka immediately starts asking a million questions about books, while Sadhu tells Mina to stop working and actually try to make a friend for once. In a matter of minutes, the two girls basically become instant best friends, leaving Sadhu to realize he is now the awkward third wheel in his own library. Since real customers are apparently allergic to this store, Sadhu decides to teach Mina how to deal with people by starting a very strange roleplay session. Fuka happily agrees to join the chaos, so Sadhu kicks things off by acting like a total Karen and shouting at Mina just to see if she cries. After Mina manages to survive his terrible acting, Fuka takes a turn and pretends to be a creepy customer, which is honestly a little too convincing. Eventually, Fuka buys a book and thanks them for letting her witness their sad lives as corporate slaves, promising to read Mina's recommendation before she bounces. Feeling proud, Sadhu tells Mina she is doing such a great job that she will be perfectly ready to run the place alone once he finally quits. This news hits Mina like a truck because nobody ever told her that Sadhu was planning to leave her behind. When he explains that he was only working there temporarily, she immediately shuts down, gives him the cold shoulder, and goes back to aggressively organizing shelves to hide her feelings. The next day, Kay texts Sadhu asking for updates on the girl drama, but then he actually walks into the room and demands his morning coffee like a king. While brewing the coffee, Sadhu zones out trying to figure out why Mina dumped all her trauma on him, and he realizes it is probably because she literally has no other friends. Unfortunately, he is so distracted that he messes up the coffee, and after one sip, Kay looks like he is about to throw up and leaves the room before he gets poisoned. Later at the library, Sadhu has to tell Mina to stop trying to lift heavy boxes with her non-existent muscles. While she wanders around, she spots a cookbook that triggers a massive flashback to the day she lost her brother to a girl. She remembers rushing downstairs to show him a book, only to find that he had brought Yuri home to cook omelet rice, which is apparently a very romantic activity. Seeing them acting all lovey-dovey made her feel like an intruder in her own house, so she panicked and ran away. Back in the present, Sadhu and Mina are outside cleaning a sign when her brother suddenly appears appears out of nowhere to talk to her. Mina immediately uses Sadhu as a human shield, hiding behind his back like a frightened cat, and when Sadhu tries to say something, the brother rudely tells him to mind his own business. Realizing that having a family scream fest on the sidewalk is a bad look, Sadhu suggests they all go to a nearby restaurant to talk like civilized human beings. At the restaurant, the brother apologizes for coming on too strong, but then immediately goes back to begging Mina to quit her job and come home. Mina refuses, explaining that she doesn't want to be a third wheel, but then Yuri suddenly spawns in the restaurant to join the intervention. Yuri and the brother team up, insisting that Mina is just being stubborn and forcing herself to work when she hates it. They treat her like a fragile glass doll, convinced she is too antisocial to function in the real world. Sadhu finally gets tired of listening to them underestimate her, so he interrupts and delivers a reality check. He tells the brother that while Mina was definitely awkward at first, she has been working incredibly hard to break out of her shell and is actually doing a good job. He insists that Mina has the right to make her own choices, and after hearing this defense, the brother finally admits defeat and leaves with Yuri. Afterward, Mina asks Sadhu why he stood up for her, and he explains that watching her grow from a scared little sister into a capable worker was actually pretty inspiring, and he wasn't going to let anyone discredit her hard work. School is finally back in session, which is honestly a tragedy for everyone involved, and the first thing Ika sees on her way to class is Sasaki looking like he's trying way too hard to be cool. This guy actually has the nerve to claim he spent his entire break becoming a gym rat and packing on muscle, but we all know he probably just lifted a heavy backpack once and called it a day. They get to class and sit down, but the moment Ika moves her head to check the school schedule, she catches Sasaki staring at her like he's watching a slow-motion car crash. When she calls him out on his weird behavior, he pulls the classic "it's nothing" move because he clearly doesn't have a better excuse for being a total creep. A few days later, we find Sadhu out in the sun, basically melting into the pavement while he tries to pretend he's not suffering in the blistering heat. He sees Fuka running toward him and has to take a deep breath to remind himself that she's not even on his level before she finally reaches him and starts complaining about how hot it is, which is really helpful information that nobody asked for. Then Mina shows up and the two girls start yapping away about books for so long that Sadhu basically turns into a piece of background furniture just watching them talk. Just when things couldn't get any more exciting, Kate decides she needs her personal servant and sends Sadhu a text demanding his services. A few hours later, Sadhu is back at the house playing the role of a professional coffee slave, serving her a cold drink like his only purpose in life is to keep her hydrated. Kate is actually shocked that he's still hanging around that bookstore and teases him about giving special attention to Mina, which catches him completely off guard. He's confused about how she even knows what's going on, but then he remembers that Shinomiya is her best friend and the ultimate gossip queen of the school. Since Cade is ignoring his questions, Sadhu decides to take a shot at her for looking like a stressed out mess even though she's the vice president of the student council. She tries to get mad at him for making fun of her, but then she basically tells him that if he has so much free time to play around at the bookstore, he should stop being useless and help out with the upcoming school tour. Sadhu tries his best to say no because he clearly values his laziness, but after a long, annoying argument with Cade, he finally gives up and agrees to get on a phone call with Shinomiya. When Shinomiya picks up the phone, she sounds like she's in a massive amount of pain, which is honestly the most relatable thing about her. She's so miserable that she actually begs Cade to stop bothering Sadhu, and for once, Cade actually listens. Sadhu tries to be a nice guy and offers to help with the tour again, but Shinomiya tries to turn him down because she probably thinks he'll just get in the way. Not wanting to take no for an answer, Sadhu doubles down and says he wants to talk to her about something personal, using some really cheesy pickup lines that actually make her blush. It's honestly embarrassing to watch, but he keeps going, acting like he's ready to do whatever she needs just to stay in her good graces. Fast forward a few days, and Sadhu meets her outside the school looking like he's ready for a job interview he's definitely going to fail. Shinomiya is acting super awkward and weird because she's still thinking about the last time they had lunch and how she tried to attack him like a crazy person. Sadhu tells her not to worry about it because apparently their entire relationship is just one big disaster anyway. As they head inside, Shinomiya finally admits the real reason she needs him. The student council girls are supposed to lead the tour, but they're too weak to move the heavy equipment, so they're basically using the boys as pack mules. She's been desperate to find guys to join the club just so the girls don't have to break a sweat. After she thanks him for volunteering his manual labor, they walk past the room where all the other tour guides are hanging out, and Sadhu finally sees the competition. It turns out the school specifically picked the most attractive, good-looking students to lead the tour, so the new kids would think the school is full of models. This immediately hurts Sadhu's feelings and ruins his day because he realizes he's going to be paired up with Ika, and standing next to her is only going to make him look like a background background character in his own life. Right on cue, Sadhu spots someone he's clearly terrified of and scurries away like a scared rabbit before he manages to make an even bigger fool of himself. A few minutes later, he and Shinomiya finally reach the committee room, where he has to endure the absolute secondary embarrassment of hearing that Mina won't stop talking about him at home, which is honestly a nightmare no one should have to live through. Sadhu tries to act like he's useful by asking what kind of actual work they expect him to do, and they quickly break down the list of chores they've prepared for their new favorite manual laborer. Later on, we see Sasaki trying to shoot his shot by inviting Ika to one of his soccer games, but she shuts him down faster than a computer with a virus because she has to go home and babysit her sister. This rejection sends her down a depressing memory lane to years ago, back when she was the ultimate professional loner with zero friends and even less of a social life. While everyone else was out actually having fun and making memories, Ika was stuck at home acting like a mini-adult, obsessed with her grades and making sure her sister didn't burn the house down. Being a total hermit made her way too sensitive to other people's drama, which is exactly why she made the mistake of feeling sorry for a guy named Seiju after he got publicly humiliated by his crush and spilled his lunch like a total klutz. Because she was far too nice for her own good, she checked on him, and of course he completely misread the situation. The very next day, he'd dragged her up to the roof to thank her, but then he went full weirdo and confessed his feelings, asking her out on the spot. Ika gave him a hard no and didn't even bother explaining why, but Sadhu clearly doesn't understand the word stop. He turned into a professional shadow, following her around every single day and begging for even the tiniest crumb of her attention like a lost puppy. Even though he was incredibly annoying, Ika secretly liked the fact that having a stalker actually made people notice her, making her boring life feel slightly less like a funeral. She thought she was finally free when he stopped obsessing over her during entrance exam season, but it turns out he was just using that time to study his way into her school just so he could keep bothering her. The moment they got into the same school, he went right back to his creepy habits, and Ika was absolutely fuming because she thought he would have grown a brain by then. His weirdly dedicated obsession eventually led her to meet a guy named Ki, who spent half his time making fun of how desperate Sadhu was to get into her good graces. Back in the present, Ika suddenly hears Sadhu's voice and starts frantically looking for him all over campus like she's lost her mind, only to run straight into Sasaki. Poor Sasaki actually thinks for a second that she's looking for him, because he clearly has an ego the size of a stadium, but she keeps looking right past him for her favorite stalker. Sasaki asks if Sadhu is still living rent-free in her head, and even though she lies through her teeth and says no, he gets a phone call and leaves her to her own thoughts. Ika starts remembering when Sadhu promised to stop chasing her, and she realizes she's actually pathetic enough to miss the attention. She finally spots him in a hallway, carrying a chair like a glorified furniture mover, and starts sprinting through the school, running laps like she's in the Olympics until she finally crashes into him. After they both stop tumbling around, Sadhu asks why she's running like the building is on fire, and Ika admits she saw him doing actual work for once. Sadhu is shocked that she even noticed he exists, but then things get truly weird when she leans in and starts sniffing him like she's a police dog. Sadhu almost passes out from sheer desperation and excitement, but when he asks why she's suddenly acting like a weirdo, she jumps back and tries to act normal. She confesses that she's sad they don't spend time together anymore, which makes Sadhu's heart race like a drum, but he tries to play it cool by asking about her summer break. He brings up her beach trip, which reminds her of that swimsuit photo he's definitely still hiding on his phone, and even though he tells her not to worry about it, she demands to see the evidence for herself. Just when you thought Sadhu couldn't get any more awkward, things go from zero to a total disaster in record time. As Ika tries to snatch the phone away to find that embarrassing swimsuit photo, Sadhu's legendary butterfingers lead to him accidentally pulling her way too close. For a split second, it actually looks like they're going to lock lips, but Kei shows up right on cue to ruin the moment like a professional mood killer. Minutes later, Sadhu is back to playing the role of a personal waiter, bringing sodas to the girls while Ika forces him to sit right between them so they can keep an eye on him. He starts explaining that he's only working the school tour because Katie bullied him into it, and when he mentions that the school specifically looked for attractive guys for the job, Kei nearly dies of laughter. She spends the next few minutes absolutely roasting him, asking if he's actually delusional enough to think he's a better-looking version of Sasaki, while Sadhu just sits there taking the verbal beating like the champ he is. As they plan their post-break hangout, Ika suggests they all spend some quality time together once the tour mess is over. Sadhu, being the ultimate worker bee, mentions he'll probably be stuck doing manual labor for a few more days because his committee has to clean up everyone else's trash. Kei basically tells him not to worry about the delay because it just gives her and Ika more time to sit around and make fun of his tragic life until he's finally free. A few days later, Sadhu tries to play the big brother role by praising Mina for her hard work, promising to help her out the next day. Mina, who's clearly drinking the Kool-Aid, promises to handle everything on her own just to show him how much she's grown, which is honestly hilarious considering they're both basically just unpaid interns. The big tour day finally arrives, and the entire student council is running around like headless chickens trying trying to impress the new students. Ika gets paired up with Sasaki, and they end up leading a group that includes Fuka, who is wandering around the campus without a single clue that she's the girl Sadu won't stop yapping about. When one of the visitors asks if Ika and Sasaki are a couple, Ika shuts that rumor down so fast it probably gave Sasaki whiplash, making it very clear that they are just classmates and nothing more. Sasaki then tries to get personal and asks to see Eri again, but Ika basically tells him to slow his roll because he's being way too forward for someone who just got friend-zoned in front of a crowd. While Ika is trying to explain why she actually likes this school, she notices a couple of low-life guys bothering Rina. Ika goes full boss mode, marching over to tell these creeps to back off, but they're too dense to realize they're being roasted. They try to act like they belong there because they're prospective students, but Ika lets them know that the school has zero interest in recruiting slow-brain losers who only care about harassing girls. After she finishes saving the day and wraps up the tour, the same boys come crawling back to beg for her forgiveness, like total cowards. Ika accepts their apology, mostly just to get them away from her, but then she spots Sadu in the distance. Fuka spots him at the exact same time and starts screaming his name, sprinting toward him while Sasaki and Ika chase after her in total confusion. Once she catches up to him and starts acting like he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, her friends show up to spill all the embarrassing tea. They start explaining to everyone within earshot that Sadu is the guy who transformed Fuka from a total slow-brain airhead into a clingy, obsessed mess who can't stop thinking about him. To make the situation even more cringeworthy, Fuka starts rambling about the date they went on, but she finally realizes she's making a complete fool of herself and sprints away with her friends, leaving Sadu to deal with the absolute social nightmare she just created. Sasaki clearly knows a disaster when he sees one, because the second things get awkward, he basically runs for his life and leaves Sadu to deal with the absolute hurricane that is Ika. She's been boiling over with rage this entire time, and she immediately manhandles him over to a bench where Kei is waiting to join in on the fun. Kei doesn't waste a single second, roasting him for being a total liar who claimed he was too busy for them this summer, even though he clearly had plenty of time to play around with Fuka. After Sadu finishes his pathetic explanation, Ika tries to snatch his phone to delete that swimsuit picture, but Sadu actually grows a spine and refuses, admitting he spends way too much time staring at it like a total weirdo. Even though she should probably call the police, Ika is so desperate for attention that she lets it slide, as long as he promises to start being her personal shadow again. Sadu is absolutely stunned because he never thought she'd actually admit she wanted him around, proving that they are both equally terrible at being normal human beings. A few days later, Sadu is back at his bookstore job when the sky decides to open up, forcing him and Mina to scramble like ants to save the book carts. Out of nowhere, Ika comes sprinting through the rain like she's in a low-budget movie, and Sadu has to tell her to get inside before she turns into a wet cat. After Mina tries to be helpful by giving her a towel, Ika starts acting jealous and wonders when Sadu became such a social butterfly, but he just tells her that Mina is actually a cool person, which is a polite way of saying unlike you. Of course, Fuka shows up right behind her, turning the bookstore into a crowded meeting spot for all the girls Sadu is currently disappointing. When he asks Ika why she's lurking in the rain, she gives the world's worst excuse, claiming she was just in the area, which is obviously a total lie. Sadu tries to get the truth out of her, but he ends up accidentally catching her when she trips, creating a super awkward moment while Mina and Fuka watch the drama unfold like they're watching a reality TV show. Ika finally cracks and admits she's only there because she's mad he didn't follow up on her invitation to visit her house. Sadu tries to blame the constant drama for his memory loss, but then Ika has a total brain fart and accidentally blurs out that she wants him to act like her little sister's older brother, which is basically a one-way ticket to the friend zone. Fast forward a few days, and Sadu is standing outside Ika's front door, losing every ounce of his confidence and looking like he's about to pass out from fear. Kei shows up just in time to be an absolute menace, ringing the doorbell before he can run away, and when Ika opens the door, she looks so good that she basically melts the last 3 working brain cells in Sadu's head. Once they're inside, he gets introduced to Ari, who immediately decides that Sadu's only purpose in life is to be her personal human horse. She spends the next several hours riding him around the room until he's physically broken, while Ika just watches with a creepy smile, happy that her sister is finally bonding with her favorite servant. Kei, who lives for chaos, points out that they probably get along because they're both the annoying younger siblings of the group. Sadu tries to remind Ika about the older brother comment she made earlier, but she denies it like a politician until Kei starts digging for all the juicy details. Kei even manages to trick little Eri into asking Sadu to be her official big brother, and before he can even catch his breath, the kid pounces on him again. She drains every last drop of his energy until he's basically a lifeless corpse rotting on the couch. Just when he thinks he can finally rest, Ika's mom walks in and gets all excited to meet the legendary boy she's heard so much about. Realizing that her mom is about to spill all her embarrassing secrets, Ika panics and shoves both Sadu and Kei out of the house before they can find out just how obsessed she really is. After Ika's mom practically begs Sadhu to come back soon, probably because she's just thrilled that someone is actually willing to hang out with her weird daughter, the group finally hits the road. Sadhu is still desperately trying to figure out what kind of embarrassing stories Ika told her mom about him, but Ika is doing a world-class job of dodging the question like a pro. Kay, who clearly lives for the drama, decides to disappear into thin air just to leave these two awkward turtles alone in the dark. As they walk together, Ika starts her big, tragic backstory monologue, explaining that before she started at this school, her family's bank account was basically a ghost town. She admits she was so obsessed with her grades because she needed a scholarship to pay the bills, which makes Sadhu feel like a total jerk for being a professional pest and making her life harder while she was already stressed out. But then the plot twist of the century happens. Ika actually admits that she only made it this far because of Sadhu's legendary stalking. When he tries to apologize for being a creep, she tells him to zip it because she actually enjoyed the constant attention. It turns out that when he finally stopped acting like her personal shadow every day, she actually felt lonely and missed having a devoted simp following her around. She basically confesses that she's addicted to his obsession and begs him to go back to talking to her every single day like he used to. Right as she's pouring her heart out, a firework goes off and scares the absolute daylight out of her, causing her to leap into his arms like a terrified cartoon character. Since she apparently can't handle a little noise, she clings to him for dear life while Sadhu just stands there, acting like a human security blanket until the sky stops exploding. On the way back to her place, the vibe is so thick you could cut it with a knife, but Sadhu is still such a coward that he can't even bring himself to hold her hand. Ika also tries to build up the nerve to make a move, but she almost chickens out too, until she remembers that this guy has been working overtime for 2 years just to get a glance from her. She finally settles for grabbing one of his fingers, which is honestly the most pathetic romantic gesture in history, but they both act like they just won a gold medal as they say their goodbyes. A few days later, the new school term kicks off, and Sadhu is immediately greeted by Katie, who treats him like a punching bag and demands he help out with the culture festival. He tries to say no for about 2 seconds before she threatens to snap his shoulder like a dry twig, and since he has the backbone of a jellyfish, he agrees instantly. He eventually runs into Ika, who's been waiting for him at the school entrance like a devoted puppy, and she starts grooming him by fixing his tie and hair. Sadhu almost has a total meltdown because having a girl within 3 inches of his face is way more than his fragile ego can handle. As they walk to class, everyone is left wondering what's next for this tragic duo. Will Sadhu go back to being a world-class simp, or will he finally play hard to get until Ika breaks down and begs for his attention?